Let us start the session by chanting Namo Tassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa. Namo Tassa Bhagavatu Arahatu Samma Sambuddhassa. Today we are continuing with the Chaitasikas. With the Chaitasikas, we've started on the akusala, or the unwholesome factors. In our last class, I think we went up to Issa, right? I think we went up to Issa. Yes, we did. We went up to Issa. So today we will be starting with the 10th. So this is page number 84. Page number 84. Avarice, Macharya. No, it is Issa today. Okay. Envy, Issa. Envy is the characteristic of being jealous of another's success. Its function is to be dissatisfied with others' success. Its manifestation as aversion towards that. Its proximate cause is others' success. So the proximate cause being others' success, the reason for Issa to arise, the proximate cause being others' success, points us towards the nature of the latent tendencies, right? About how these latent tendencies operate. Where now the seeing of another person's success, being the beholder of another person's success, is the very proximate cause which leads way to the arising of an unwholesome factor such as Issa, right? Such as Issa. Now, such as Issa. Now, avarice, Macharya. The characteristic of avarice or stinginess is concealing one's own success when it has been or can be obtained, right? The characteristic of avarice or stinginess is concealing one's own success when it has been or can be obtained. Its function is not to bear sharing these with others. It is manifest as shrinking away from sharing and as meanness or sour feeling. Its proximate cause is one's own success. Its proximate cause is one's own success. Now, even with regards to Dhamma, sometimes this can arise where we sometimes hide factors of Dhamma to maintain that we know more. Or sometimes Dhamma is taught or preached in a way that sometimes other people don't understand it easily, just to maintain a sort of superiority over the people who do not understand. In very subtle manners, this can arise. In very subtle manners. Sometimes we think that it might harm another person. Sometimes we think it might lead to other people's ego arising, ego boost, so we do not share or we do not say, right? So these things, sometimes unknowingly we find that there is macharya or avarice or stinginess in that sort of a way has arisen, right? Its function is not to bear sharing with others. So you cannot bear to share whatever it is with other people, manifested from shrinking away from sharing, or as a meanness or sour feeling, and its proximate cause is again one's own success. That is to say that this is a cognitive problem. I'm sorry. This is a cognitive problem. Why is it a cognitive problem? Because it is the way that one sees one's success, and in communicating and being with other people, you find it very difficult to share whatever which has led to one's success, or whatever which will help another person reach one's level, the same level that you are in. You try to hide it, or sort of hide it or conceal it from another person. The 11th, worry, kukucha. Kukucha is worry or remorse after having done wrong. Its characteristic is subsequent regret. Its function is to sorrow over what has and what has not been done. Right? I think we can relate to this hindrance very often in every time that we sort of do something or we are unable to do something. Right? It is manifested as remorse. Its proximate cause is what has and what has not been done. Wrong thing, wrong of commission and omission. Right? Wrong of commission and omission. So, kukucha, this is sometimes we confuse it with our Dhamma practice as well. I think in many instances I have reminded you the importance of not regretting, but learning from mistakes and then moving on. This is then the hindrance, or this is then the connected defilement which would arise in terms of a consciousness which would harbor that sort of unwholesome. But also now worry, avarice, worry, envy, hatred, conceit. Now these are unwholesome factors which would usually arise with unwholesome. So the more unwholesome that one performs, the more unwholesome consciousnesses that one performs, one cannot just do an unwholesome and think, no, I will not be worried. Worry is a part and parcel of the unwholesome. To whatever degree the worry, avarice, envy, hatred, whatever these things, to whatever extent it would arise, regardless, it is there. Right? It is going to be there, right? Especially with regards to those consciousnesses connected to the roots of hate. It is going to be there. Now the next one, sloth and slothina. Sloth is sluggishness or dullness of mind. Its characteristic is lack of driving power. Its function is to dispel energy. It is manifested as a sinking of mind. Its proximate cause is unwise attention to boredom, drowsiness. Right? Now, again, you see, here when we look at these mental factors and how these mental factors can lead way to certain other emotions, for example, with regards to this mental factor, sloth, you see boredom, drowsiness, right? Lethargy, fatigue, the loss of energy, right? So feeling weak, all of these things arising from when a person has devoted oneself to the constant practice of what is not good, unwholesome. These chetasikas that arise with, as I just mentioned, with regards to kukucha or worry, these chetasikas arise with consciousnesses that are bad, right? Predominantly unwholesome hatred. And when they arise, you cannot sort of determine that, you will be okay with it. The more that you harbor these thoughts, the more that you harbor these consciousnesses, the more that these chetasikas arise in your mind, your life is going to sort of be driven in certain ways that you cannot control, because these things happen without you knowing. When we practice more when we live in a way that we are not developing kusala, wholesome, and rather akusala, what happens is these factors, as a latent tendency, without you knowing, you find that you are slowly being dragged down, like unknowingly standing on quicksand where you are sinking into the ground, just like that. These mental factors drag you down in mind. Now, for example, I think the to the extent of which the Buddha has been balanced in a way, the way that he sort of preaches his doctrine. Of course, he has a part of his doctrine which goes into detail about the dangers of akusala with the Alavaka suttas and the suttas regarding the hells and the burning and all of that. But with regards to spiritual practice, the Buddha has always tried to maintain himself within the discourse of the practice. When we take now things such as actually Hindu books, such as the Bhagavad Gita, the Patanjali, we find that in these practice of the rishis, you find that these rishis were very cautious. Of course, I believe that the Buddha's Dhamma is much more deeper, matter of fact. But with regard to the practice, these rishis, something that they were very cautious is protecting the energy of the mind, harnessing the energy of the body to fuel the mind, right? Meaning they will not, one thing is, with regards to the first thing that I said, they will not waste the mental energy that they have on things that are beyond their control and not something which applies to them. That is one thing. The other thing is, physically, they would of course do their whatever they eat, right? The chemicals, the fluids of the body which is released, all of these things, they're very cautious about it, and they try to preserve energy as much as possible. Right? And that is very much talked about, more than actually it's talked about to that extent, to a great extent, in the Hindu doctrine with regards to the yogic Vedic practices, right? Now, torpor. Mid. Torpor is the morbid state of the mental factors. Its characteristic is unwieldiness. Its function is to smother. It is manifested as drooping or as nodding and sleepiness. Its proximate cause is the same as that of sloth. Sloth and torpor always occur in conjunction and are opposed to energy. Sloth is identified as sickness of consciousness, chitta gilanya. Torpor as sickness of mental factors, kaya gilanya. Right? Now, I think the way that it's sort of sloth and torpor is spoken about, you can imagine a drunkard, an alcoholic, a person who is, just beyond his senses, right? A person who is not connected to reality, sleeping, drowsy all the time, having no energy to even wake himself up in the morning. It's a very pathetic situation that you see, right? It's a very pathetic situation that you see with regards to sloth and torpor. And the sad fact is, we do see a lot of these people, right? We do see a lot of these people being sort of pulled into states such as this because of the very the toxic lives that they might be living. This is not to do with whether you're a Buddhist or not. Sometimes it's basically to do with the amount of alcohol that you consume, the amount of drugs that one must be consuming, the amount of parties or nightlife that one might be engaging in. All of these things drain a person, period. It drains a person to such an extent that he has to get up from the bodies, to get up from bed is something that requires a lot of effort, or something that it doesn't happen naturally, right? And for some, they even find that difficult to do, right? So it is a state of sickness of consciousness. Why? Because sloth and torpor, it absolutely drags everything down, right? It drags everything down. It weakens the rest of the mental factors. It weakens the rest of the mental factors that even arise. And it puts you into a state of, into a pathetic state of being, right? And that being practiced over and over and over and over again, right? You find yourself. And this was very much, I think now most of us being coming from the East, we know how it is, the way that we look at people who get up late, right? The way that we look at people who get up late, who would sleep until, but in countries like this, of course, people tentatively do get up late. But in Sri Lanka or the East, in certain parts of the East, not every part of the East, but certain parts of the East, and so through history, we have had the fact that this sloth and torpor, being lazy and, acting all fatigued and all of this, being that all the time, is a signpost, a sort of a visual of an unhealthy, undeveloping life, right? As said here in sloth and torpor as well, right? As a pair, they constitute one of the 5 hindrances, right? As a pair, they constitute one of the 5 hindrances, sloth and torpor, which is overcome by initial application, vitakka, right? Now, how is it overcome by initial application? By readversion of the mind again and again and again and again and all over again to wholesome, right? To wholesome. That is what you advert your mind to. Something which is good. Push yourself to get up. Push yourself to do stuff. Don't even listen to yourself at this period. This period is not even a period that you should be listening to yourself. This is a period that you should be listening to another person, right? A person who is a good friend, a person who is your mother or your father, someone who can absolutely, give you the push that you require to get up from the position that your mind is in. Then we come to the 14th, the last of the unwholesome factors, that is doubt, vichikiccha. Doubt here signifies spiritual doubt. From a Buddhist perspective, the inability to place confidence in the Buddha, the Dhamma, the Sangha, and the training. Its characteristic is doubting. Its function is to waver. It is manifested as indecisiveness and as taking various sides. Its proximate cause is unwise attention, right? Is unwise attention. Now, I am a bit, it's a bit funny how this, the doubt has been explained. It would have helped to have a more generalization of what doubt is. But according to the doctrine, when we look at doubt, doubt is when doubt arises or vichikiccha arises. What does vichikiccha arise with? When you do not believe in the law of karma, the law of rebirth and death, the law of rebirth, the law of death, the law of rebirth and death, the Eightfold Noble Path, cause and effect, Buddha, Dhamma, Sangha. Those 6, right? Those 6, when you do not believe or you have no rapture towards those 6, that is when we say that this person is inflicted with this doubt, vichikiccha. But this doubt is also a little bit different from the doubt that you might have. For example, the doubt that you would usually have, is it going to rain today? Now that is doubt as well. Is that doubt this doubt? That sort of doubt is a little bit different, where this doubt again pulls you down. It hurts you, it hurts your confidence, it hurts your mental stamina. It pulls you down, it weakens you, it tells you that you can't do, or rather even worse, that it's not worth doing it. right? It's not worth doing it. Or rather, why am I living? Why am I alive? What is this life? In a way that now Dhamma should enlighten you, it should strengthen you, it should give you all the necessary faculties, strengthening of faculties that you require to go ahead. But this kind of thing, we sometimes think, there is no meaning to life, and you're so depressed about it. No, that is not Dhamma. Right? That is not Dhamma, where you are depressing yourself about it. That is more to do with akusala. Dhamma has to support you. Dhamma has to give you energy. Remember, if something is taking away your energy, you're more festering within the darkness of akusala rather than the Dhamma. Right? Make that a signpost for yourself. Make a note of that in your mind. Right? Dhamma has to give you strength. Akusala always weakens you. Right? Akusala always weakens you. Now, moving on. Right? Moving on. Before we move on, does anyone have any questions? If you do, you can unmute your mics and ask the question. Yes, I have to answer a question that Mala, Damsiri, and the whole group asked everyone. Asked me, and then I did not remember, or I could not remember to answer it, but later on when I was thinking about it, I remembered, and this is what happened. So the question was, will an enlightened being, or a being who attains Sotapanna, stream entry, be born within the Rupa Vachara or the Arupa Vachara planes? Right? The answer is, any being who is Sotapanna and aiming towards Arahanthood will not be born in the Rupa Vachara or the Arupa Vachara planes, right? In the Arupa Vachara planes, right? In the Arupa Vachara planes, where one will be reborn. Why is this? Because the length of these planes are so immensely long that they do not. So even the Buddha, during his time of practice as a Bodhisattva, has never been born within these planes, although he has visited these planes, right? Although he has visited these planes as a Bodhisattva. So when I say Bodhisattva, I'm referring to all the births after Sumedha Tapasa, when his initial determination was made, right? When the initial determination of saying, I want to attain Buddhahood. Now, even today, if one is to make a determination, I want to attain Buddhahood, and work and practice accordingly, right? Work and practice accordingly, you will not be reborn. Even if you have the jhanas, you will not be reborn in such a plane. Why? Because it does not suit your purpose, right? It karmically does not suit your purpose, because the goal of enlightenment in one would be having a stronger relation to where your rebirth is going to be, right? Where your stronger rebirth is going to be. All right. So moving on. Does anyone have any other questions? Okay, moving on. Now we come across to the beautiful factors, 25. There are 25. This is page number 85. And we come to the beautiful factors. These beautiful factors, you find that the first category of these are universal beautiful factors, Sobhana, Sadharana, which are 18 in number. And these beautiful factors will arise in all good, with all good consciousnesses, right? In all Sobhana, consciousness, beautiful factors. Sobana sadharana, right? Universal to all beautiful consciousnesses. Now, what are these? Saddha satihiri otappang alobo adoso tatra majjatata kaya passaddi chitta passaddi kaya lahuta chitta lahuta kaya mudutta chitta mudutta kaya kammanyata chitta kammanyata kaya pagunyata chitta pagunyata kaya kata chittu okay, I can't pronounce that. Chittuju kata chati ekuna visati ime chetasika sobana sadharana nama. Right? Faith, mindfulness, shame, fear of wrongdoing, non-greed, non-hatred, neutrality of mind, tranquility of the mental body, tranquility of consciousness, lightness of the mental body, lightness of consciousness, malleability of mental body, malleability of consciousness, wilderness of the mental body, wilderness of the consciousness, proficiency of the mental body, proficiency of consciousness, rectitude of the mental body, rectitude of the consciousness. These 19 mental factors are termed the universal beautiful consciousness. Now let us see what they are. The universal beautiful factors, Sobana Sadharana. The beautiful mental factors are subdivided into 4 groups. First come the universal beautiful factors, 19 Chaitasikas that are invariably present in all beautiful consciousnesses. Following this comes 3 groups of beautiful Chaitasikas, which are variable adjuncts, not necessarily contained in beautiful consciousnesses. Now, we are starting off with a beautiful consciousness. Before we do, let us just go up to page number 79 to the table. Right? And in the table you find, just to give you a chart of what these are that we are doing, right? You find the beautiful universals 19, then you find the abstinences, which the paragraph mentioned, which is called the virati, right? Right speech, right action, right livelihood. Then we find the illimitables 2, right? And then we find non-delusion of the faculty panindriya, they call it, the faculty of wisdom, right? So just have an idea of what we are doing now. Now we have completed the ethically variable factors, we've completed, right? Now all the factors up to this point are we have completed the ethically variable, and then we have gone down to the unwholesome factors, which are 14, and now we are going through the beautiful factors, right? The beautiful factors. Of the beautiful factors, these 19 Chaitasikas, mental factors that we are going to go through, are universal or apply to all beautiful consciousnesses, right? Now, back to our page number 85, right? Faith, Shraddha. The first of the beautiful Chaitasikas is faith, which has the characteristic of placing faith or of trusting. Its function is to clarify. As a water clearing gem causes muddy water to become clear, or its function is to set forth as one might set forth to cross a flood. It is manifested as non-fogginess, also the removal of mind's impurities, or as resolution. Its proximate cause is something to place faith in, or hearing of the good Dhamma that constitute the factors of stream entry, right? Now, faith. Faith, when placed, now faith, when we refer to this faith, right, now see that faith arises under those mental factors that are beautiful and supportive of those which are wholesome. That is the first thing that you must notice. This faith does not arise within anything to do with the unwholesome, right? With anything to do with unwholesome. Sometimes we find that in our life, we put our faith in places that we should not, right? And I think we have all at one point of our lives made that mistake. Maybe some of us are still making that mistake. In putting our faith, I will use that word for the light of explanation. In putting our faith in something which we should not, this is not the faith that we find here. It is not Shraddha. Because Shraddha is a quality of mind which arises with intellect, wisdom, logic, and proper reasoning, right? And proper reasoning. This is to say that this faith that we have arising in the Sobhana Sadharanas, you are most welcome to disturb me anytime and ask a question if you do have any. This faith, because of that reason, is seen as a gem that clears the water of its impurities. It is seen as a practice that could clear the mind of its impurities. It is as if a magical creature who could step on the water and then clear the muddy waters like that. This Shraddha, what it does, it gives us clarity of mind. It gives us clarity of mind. It does not give us it does not give us sort of this delusionary illusion in our mind. Now, as we go through this, we will have to at one point, when we learn about these things, it is paramount that, we are learning these things not to be scholars. Some of you might be, but, the reason that the Buddha has taught us all of this or left us with all of this Dhamma is to use it for our practice. When we look at sometimes the faith that we have personally in our hearts, sometimes we find that even the faith that we have laid towards our religion, our practice, sometimes deludes us also, right? And that is something that some of us sometimes do, right? This cannot happen if it is a kusala faith or a beautiful faith, right? If you take the teachings of the Buddha, the primary teachings or the core teachings of the Buddha is anicca, dukkha, anattva. That is the core practice of the Buddha. All conditioned phenomena is anicca, dukkha, anattva. Phenomena, sankhara, is all divisible by four: chitta, chetasika, rupa, and then we have nibbana. These are the ultimate realities that we are currently studying. In other words, we could also say nama, rupa. In other words, we could say the five aggregates: rupa, vedana, sanya, sankhara, vijnana, right? This, if we are to look at everything that goes on in our life, good and bad, this gives us an answer to both that good and bad. From the part of the anicca, dukkha, anattma, to the 5 aggregates, this answers the question, many questions that we have. It answers the question on sexism. It answers questions on racism. It answers question on heartache. It answers questions on the mourning of the death of a loved one. It answers questions on craving and attachment. It answers every question that we have. But some of the religious practices that we, right, sometimes even certain practices that have been brought into our practice through cultural interventions brings us a sense of delusion, right? Brings us a sense of delusion. For example, right, when we would, in Sri Lanka, with regards to the way that we practice Bodhi Puja, right? Bodhi Puja effectively should be a practice of Buddhanusati and Samadhi, which leads to the removal of many obstacles that you face in your life. Rather, it has now become a way of deity worship, right? It has become a way of deity worship where we find people, rotating and walking around the Bodhis day and night, asking for everything from killing of a enemy to bringing close of a person who doesn't love you, but you love that person and you want that person in your life. From love to hate, we ask everything from this deity. To that extent, we find that now that is where the Shraddha, you have to realize, if in any way the mind feels constricted, closed up, cornered, that is akusala. Even with regards to the religion, if the mind feels enlightened and open, that is Shraddha. You are having your mind correct. Now, these are the ways, children, that the Buddha has taught us to check on ourselves, right? You see, the Buddha goes into great depth. Whilst the Buddha, he's also not showing that this is the predominant factor, but what he's showing us through these teachings is the consciousness might be you offering something to a poor person, which is a beautiful consciousness, right? Which is a beautiful consciousness. But within that, what arises, first of all, Shraddha. In performing that good action, doesn't it bring you a sense of lightness, right? Doesn't it bring whoever this person is, whoever it is, the world around, Buddhist, non-Buddhist, racist, whoever they are, don't people usually like and respect charity? Right? It is the stingiest of the stingiest who would complain and all of these things. Let's put those people aside, right? But generally, isn't it accepted the world over that charity is a good thing and it is something that everyone must do? Yes. Right? Why is that? Because it clears the mind. People might not be talking about these things, but we have a Dhamma which goes into such great detail about this. Right? About such great detail with regards to why we feel so calm, so happy to do things that are good, right? In that way to help another person. Moving on, right? Moving on. Buddhi, you have a question?
Yes. Bhante.
Yes.
It's about faith, your explanation.
Yeah.
I saw you first said the faith that comes through your understanding and logic and reasoning.
Yeah.
And you said the faith you are talking about is different to that. That's what you try to convey. Is that correct? That's what I got.
Okay. So what I was basically saying is the faith that should be practiced, and also with regard to Dhamma, everything that we perform, the Buddha says, have a reason behind it. No.
Yeah.
Right? In that way, there is logic and reasoning and science behind it. Right? But sometimes we also, with regards to sometimes even our religions, we sometimes get deluded and we do things for the sake of doing it, which clouds the mind, which hinders that openness of the mind. That is not the faith here. That is more of a akusala base.
Yeah. So you mean the faith we are discussing
Yeah.
comes by realizing to a degree that there is something in this and some logical belief that there is something good or
Faith
something
will
correct in that.
always, for Shraddha to arise, Prajna has to always be there. It will not arise without Prajna,
Okay.
right?
Yeah.
Prajna has to always be there. Now we will come to that, right? We will come to
Right.
that. It is there, right? Down there, it is there, right? Prajna, now, pun in there, it's the last, right? So Prajna will always be there for faith, right? And the faith being, we see faith being the first characteristic of a sobana sadharana or a universal beautiful factor, which says a lot about its importance in the way that it clears the mind, right? Clears the mind can be the words that we would use is clarity, calmness, tranquility. All of this is made possible by this factor of faith.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So if prajna is not playing a part in there, it
That is not faith.
becomes a blind faith, it's so to speak.
No,
Is that right?
blind faith. Now, blind faith we never use in Abhidhamma because that term you cannot connect it anywhere, right?
Okay.
So, for example, this faith is the only faith that we have come across, isn't it? Right?
Yes.
This is the only faith that we have come across, and it is a faith. It is not divisible into right faith and blind faith. No, right? It is only if there is no prajna, it goes down to delusion,
Okay.
right? If there is no prajna, vichikitcha, right? Restlessness. These are the things that causes those practices, not faith here, not the shraddha here.
Okay. I think I'm yeah. Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Did you understand, Nihal?
Yes. Yes.
Yeah,
Yes.
sure.
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay.
Thank you.
All right. Mala, did you have a question? Ru, you can unmute your mic if you do.
Bhante,
Yeah.
I have seen in Anuradhapura near Ruwanmeli Fair, people covering the whole ground with lotus flowers. And I see they do it with lot of shraddha, with lot of faith in Buddha.
Yeah.
So what do you think of that, what that sort of practices?
Oh, it all comes down to the reason behind it.
Mm-hmm.
Right? If one is performing these practices as a way of arousing buddhanusati, with holding in mind the qualities of the Buddha, right? If there is logic and reason, now, for example, why do we offer flowers? It is to speak of the quality, the morals of the Buddha, the sila of the Buddha. That is what the flower, the smell of the flower, the beauty of the flower, that is what, and if it is lotuses, it is to say that the Buddha, having grown from or being a human being, having come out from a mother's womb, fearlessly became a Buddha, free of all attachment and hindrances. That is what a lotus symbolifies regarding a Buddha, right? It all comes down to the Chetana that we have, right? But sometimes we forget about the Buddha, we forget about all else, right? And we just repeat, we have heard, it brings us luck, it brings us this, it brings us that, right? Sometimes we are afraid, right? We are afraid of, now, for example, I know certain people who live, certain people who have broken into nidana treasures, right? And they are now scared that the evil spirits and forces will come behind them. So every month they do a big puja, right, to protect themselves, right? Now that is not shraddha. right? That is not because of Shraddha, that is to save their lives. Right? That comes directly from fear. Right? That comes directly from fear. So we are referring to, of course, during the whole process. Now, for example, even a person, when they are putting the flowers together, or whenever these people who are doing these sacrifices and whatever it is to save their lives, at one point, at 1 minute, faith can arise. I'm doing this for the Buddha. Maybe this thought can arise, right? But predominantly, the base of the action is something which is not rooted in the faith that we are talking about here, right? So it all depends on the reason or the foundation of that action, right? The reason or the foundation of that action. Ru, you had a question?
Yeah, so no, actually, it was just a appreciation, really, to say that, I mean, I normally gauge what's good by how something is like universally applicable and universally good. So, for things like metta or kindness, I could always say that the concept of kindness is always the Buddha's word, or the Buddha or Dhamma, because it's universal. However, I've always had a problem with how the faith that, like, say, some Sri Lankans have, you see some older people in Sri Lanka having tremendous faith, but it didn't quite have that universal element. See how they go to Kataragam, and like their attitude in going to that didn't have that universal element. So I was always wondering, the proximity to Dhamma, and anyway, this discussion has brought some light into my mind about the matter. So thank you.
All right, Ru. So, all right, if there are no other questions, we will continue. Now, then we go on to the second factor, sati. The word sati derived from a root meaning to remember. But as a mental factor, it signifies presence of mind, attentiveness to the present, rather than the faculty of memory regarding the past. Let me read that again. The word sati derives from the root meaning to remember. But as a mental factor, it signifies presence of mind, right? Presence of mind, attentiveness to the present, rather than the faculty of memory regarding the past. It has the characteristic of not wobbling, like not floating away from the object. Its function is absence of confusion or non-forgetfulness. It is manifested as guardianship, or as a state of confronting an objective field. Its proximate cause is strong perception, thira sanya, or the four foundations of mindfulness, right? Now, sati is a word, of course, that we are very used to coming across, right? Like rightly said, sati has the ability to contain the mind or stabilize the mind with an object, right? Within an object. It is manifested as guardianship, or a state of confronting an objective field, right? Confronting an objective field. Its proximate cause is strong perception. Now, what is that? Strong perception, thira sanya. Now, thira sanya is strong perception arises by when one adverts the mind by way of the Dhamma. What are we relating to in terms of Dhamma? Anicca, dukkha, anatma, impermanent, suffering, non-self, to the object at hand, right? So for example, you could just be having a cup of tea or just lounging, and you could just feel that there is some sort of pain in your thigh. But when you're meditating, the perception of that pain is quite different to the perception of the pain that you would do when you're lounging, right? In that way, it is a stronger perception which brings about a different effect altogether, right? A different effect altogether. So as we practice the 4 foundations of mindfulness, this is the Chetasika which would carry that practice, or which would be instrumental in allowing for that practice. Next, Hiri Otappa, or shame and the fear of wrongdoing. Shame has a characteristic of disgust at bodily and verbal misconduct. Fear of wrongdoing has a characteristic of dread in regard to such misconduct. They both have the function of not doing evil and are manifested as the shrinking away from evil. The approximate cause is respective for self and respect for others, respectively. These 2 states are called by the Buddha the guardians of the world because they protect the world from falling into widespread immorality, right? Now, there is something that we need to discuss with regards to this in terms of, I think the wording is quite clear. The wording is quite clear. The wording is quite clear. However, when we come into now Hiri Otappa, I mentioned in the last class with regards to now all of these all of these mental factors as they arise and passes away, there can be shifts, because now a stream of consciousness arises and then another stream arises, another stream arises, another stream arises. So when a combination of streams, now for example, for me to lift the bottle or for me to sort of see one of your faces, it might take about 5 to 7 streams of consciousness, right? But then I can switch to a whole different stream. So I am looking, for one moment I can be quite happy to see your face, the other moment I can be quite unhappy to look at your face. In that way, this shift can happen. In a similar way, sometimes now Hiri Otappa, when we are practicing Hiri Otappa, sometimes very easily due to our internalized hate or self-hate, sometimes the Hiri Otappa, with Hiri Otappa rising, next arises self-hate, right? Now, for example, have you realized sometimes, okay, you are afraid of something, you are afraid of doing something, saying something, or something of this sort, right? And then to this regard, what do? You do not want to act. And then your mind goes on a whole journey of scolding you, putting yourself down, or in that way sort of really penalizing you for even thinking. Now that part is not Hiri Otappa, right? That is more dosa, right? That is not more dosa, that is dosa, right? So Hiri Otappa, sometimes that is where we have, that is where this balance that we talk about, right? When we are unaware, because sometimes even in being a Buddhist, we are too attached to upholding that to such a level that it is no longer practical. We are taking ourselves away from reality. The fact that we must be aware is that in this path, in this journey, we have the potential to fall. And when we do, we rise again. But because of our egocentric ways, we do not enable ourselves, or we do not allow ourselves to get up gracefully. Rather, we penalize ourselves for falling, right? We penalize ourselves for falling. So in this way, when we go through these factors, and when we are, again, I would say, this is like, it gives us an in-depth analysis of the consciousnesses, right? Of the consciousness. Whilst we are looking at the kusala consciousnesses here, the wholesome mental wholesome mental factors here, the beautiful mental factors here, we can also see the right opposite within us, right? This is very important to note, right? This is very important to note. You might have realized sometimes, right? Sometimes, and also I do agree with it to a certain extent personally, you find that sometimes people who are quite spiritual are also quite nasty. I'm sorry, not spiritual, religious, are also quite nasty, right? Why is this? Because of things like this, right? Because with the attachment and the sort of the rigidness that they have with their practice, and the gung-ho nature that they have with the practice, in the way that they have clung on to it, the more mistakes that they tentatively make, you find that they are frustrating themselves. They are frustrating. We are frustrating ourselves again and again and again and again. So it puts you or makes you into a sad person. Please, when you're walking on this journey, have a balance, right? Have a balance, and always know, right? The Buddha says, why has the Buddha taught us about death? Why has the Buddha taught us about old age, sickness, all of these things? For us to realize that this is what we inevitably will face. Why? So we are prepared for it. Not that we run away from it, or not that we sort of shun it, or not that we suicide ourselves or kill ourselves when we are young. It is to basically prepare yourselves. This is what is going to happen. You will have to face this. So face it with knowledge, face it with Dhamma, have Dhamma on your side, and go on your journey. That is basically it, right? You will fall again and again and again and again, just as the Buddha, before he was enlightened, fell, right? Just before he was enlightened, as a bodhisattva, he too, in his even last birth, he fell again and again and again and again. He had to go through so many years of self-mortification, right? Just to realize that it doesn't work. Just imagine what kind of a thing is that after going through such amount of practice. So remember, you are not going to be excused from that pain. You will go through similar, but get yourself up, brush your shoulders, and walk the path again. Do not be sort of regretful and have this whole self-hate phenomena arising in you. Moving on. Does anyone have any questions regarding that? Okay. Shriyani.
Still, I didn't understand what is Hiriyotta.
So Hiriyotta is,
I thought it's a shame.
This shame and fear of doing wrong, anything wrong.
Yeah. Okay.
Right. So basically, it is okay. So do you think, okay, this fear, Shriyani, right? This is not like, for example, this is a very subtle phenomena. It is not, for example, it is not like the fear that we experience at a fire, right? That fear is not this fear, right? That fear is going to arise because of hatred. Now, if this house is going to sort of, go blaze, and I'm going to run out of the house, that energy that I'm going to have to run out of the house is going to be because of a hate root, right? That is that fear. That is how that fear arises, right? This fear is a bit different. We have to understand that because, again, one, this is a kusala, wholesome. Kusala does not create a busy shebang, right? Kusala, that is not the way kusala operates. Kusala is very calm. It is tranquil. It is calming, right? It is cooling, it is warm, right? In a very pleasant sense. That is what kusala is, right? That is the feel of kusala. It's a beautiful mind, right? So that is the first thing that you must note, right? The shame and fear of wrongdoing, right, arises with, remember, we do not have any consciousness which is arises with regards to fear. And now, for example, we have in the opposite of, we discussed in faith, we discussed uddacha and vichikiccha, right? So the opposite of faith is vichikiccha. We do not have a consciousness which performs this hiri ottappa action in the consciousnesses, right? This is going to sow. This is going to be a very mild thought or mild essence within the thought process, right? That is why I said that part which comes after, I should not do it, right? For example, now let us say, now, we do not perform sacrifices. As a matter of fact, we are afraid of sacrifices, and we do not even want to watch a sacrifice, right? That is our level. I believe that all of you are like that, and I hope that you are. That is our level of life. We are not people who are into killing of animals. We are peaceful bunch, right? We are not into killing of animals at all, even a mosquito, right? But of course, the sacrifice is of another level. Now, let's say someone says that we need to sacrifice, or we need to kill a goat, right? Sometimes when you go to Sri Lanka, sometimes these crazy pusalis tell you different things, no? Right? These, probably because they're getting a commission from the slaughterhouse, right? So, so they tell you these crazy things, today let's kill a goat, tomorrow let's kill a cow. I feel like beef. Right? Whatever it is, all these different things that you hear. But in your mind, the moment that you hear it, it's not even a no, but you are completely not going to. It doesn't even come into your mind that you're going to do it. What comes into your mind is, what did this man just say? Right? Now that is how fear, did you understand the example?
Yeah.
That is how Hiriotapa operates. It is a by-part of kusala. It is a by-part of anything to do with the beautiful. Do you understand?
Yes.
Right?
Yes.
But then sometimes now your son, or you're going through a very bad time. You need to kill a goat according to this Pusali. Right? Now you start contemplating, my gosh, how am I going to do this? Now that happens because of fear arising from hate.
Okay.
Do you understand? Yeah. So you have to differentiate, understand what fear is and what hiriotappa is, right? And always in that understanding, realize hiriotappa is a beautiful cetasika. Fear, which arises from the unwholesome consciousnesses, is a hatred-rooted consciousness. Understood, Shriyani?
Yes. Thank you, Bhante.
Good. All right. Moving on. Alobha, right? Alobha, non-greed. Non-greed has a characteristic of the mind's lack of desire for its object. Again, non-greed has the characteristic of the mind's lack of desire for its object, or non-adherence to the object, like a drop of water on a lotus leaf. A drop of water on a lotus leaf, right? the lotus effect, right? It does not absorb into the leaf. I think you know, right? Its function is not to lay hold. Its function is to not lay hold, and its manifestation is detachment. It should be understood that non-greed is not the mere absence of greed, but the presence of positive virtues such as generosity and renunciation as well. Right? It is not the absence, if it's not just the mere absence of greed, but also the existence of generosity and renunciation, right? That is what gives rise. Remember Nekkhamma Sankappa, right? Nekkhamma Sankappa is what supports Alobha. Avihimsa Sankappa and Avyapada Sankappa, thoughts of non-hate and non-ill will, are those which support, or rather work against, hatred, right? And support non-hate, right? So Nekkhamma, in that way, Nekkhamma, which is renunciation. Renunciation in Nekkhamma in that way can be renouncing one's bad, right? The one's bad qualities that one's have sort of clung on to, or the attachments that one has. It can also be the renouncing of things that one likes, right? The renouncing of things that one likes and one wants oneself to give it to another person to make another person happy. In both ways, this can be called renunciation, right? Nekkhamma Sankappa, right? Thoughts of renunciation. I think that is clear. Moving on, right? Non-hatred, adosa. Non-hatred as a characteristic of non-hatred has the characteristic of lack of ferocity, or of non-opposing. Its function is to remove annoyance or to remove fever, and its manifestation is agreeableness. Its manifestation is agreeableness. Non-hatred comprises such positive virtues as loving kindness, gentleness, amity, friendliness, etc. When non-hatred appears as a sublime quality of loving kindness, it has the characteristic of promoting the welfare of living beings. Its function is to prefer their welfare. Its manifestation is the removal of ill will. Its proximate cause is seeing beings as lovable. Such loving kindness must be distinguished from selfish affection, its near enemy. Such loving kindness must be distinguished from selfish affection, its near enemy. Right? This is to say, for example, I think most of us have gone through, when you say the near enemy, it is to say this is what sometimes it's mistaken for, right? Mistaken for. Meaning now sometimes we find it very easy to be respectful and courteous towards people with power and influence, right? People with power and influence. We find it very easy to be courteous, to be very, to have a sense of chivalry, right? We find it quite easy, right? And we find that it comes naturally sometimes, right? But sometimes when then we experience in a similar situation people who are not powerful and influential, that does not come naturally, right? Now that is not adosa, right? That is just lobha, right? That is not non-hatred, that is greed, which makes you do that. It is easy, it is also called a masquerading factor, right? Where you are sometimes unaware, but mostly masquerading factors usually deal with more of the upakleshas or the finer hindrances rather than gross hindrances such as this, right? This is basically you being nice to get your way, right? To get your way or to have favor over someone or something of that sort, right? And that is what it is mentioned here. That is also clear. Let us move on, right? Tatra majjatata, neutrality of mind. The Pali term for this Chaitasika literally means they are in the middleness, right? It is a synonym for equanimity, upekka, not as neutral feeling, but as a mental attitude of balance, detachment, impartiality. It has the characteristic of conveying consciousness and the mental factors evenly. Its function is to prevent deficiency and excess, or to prevent partiality. It is manifested as neutrality. It should be seen as a state of looking on with equanimity in the chitta and chaitasikas. Like a charioteer who looks on with equanimity at the thoroughbreds progressing evenly along the roadway, neutrality of mind becomes a sublime quality of equanimity towards living beings. As such, it treats beings free from discrimination, without preference and prejudices, looking upon all as equal. This equanimity should not be confused with its near enemy, the worldly minded indifference due to ignorance. Right? So basically now please remember, when we are discussing all of these Chaitasikas, these are supportive essences of factors of consciousness. These are not consciousnesses. These are all which plays its little part in supporting a wholesome mind in this sense, right? Because we are going through the beautiful Chaitasikas at the moment, right? So Tatra Majjatata is all about bringing that balance, equality, right, with regards to all the mental factors and the consciousness that arises. The object, right, with regards to the object. Because look here, you see, now this says a lot about, again, when we do something that is good, right? When we do something that is good, it is not within the law of goodness that we sort of rate people higher or lower, right? The thing is, us, in the moment of good, we are not taking into consideration which level we are, or whatever that is. We do it in terms of wholly for another person's benefit. For another person's benefit. If we are bringing in a sense of disruption of ego here, and that disrupts the whole law or the action of good, right? The law and action of good. Now, this is quite funny because, sometimes now I have not experienced this, but I have heard from other monks who have sometimes, when you give a dana, sometimes it is expected by some people that you do a whole big sort of guna varna, we call it, right? a Gunavarana. Actually, it happened to me once, and what I did was I took the list and I gave it to the Upastayaka to read it out, you know, and look how shady I am. I was like, I am not going to do this for you, you know, and I gave it to the Upastayaka to read it out, also because the list was written in Sinhala. So I could not read Sinhala. I still can't. But also for those reasons. But I also saw, because the Bana was 20 minutes and they had about 2 pages of things written down. And I was like, do you want me to read out to you this, or do you want me to give you a Bana? What is it that you want me to do? Because we only have 20 minutes here, right? And likewise, we find that sometimes in goods, when we are doing good, we sort of try to now sort of bring in the sense of, you know, this must be done, this must be done. But it is a whole action of selflessness, right? It is a whole action of selflessness on your part, and on the receiver's part also. It's a different action of being grateful, right? It's a different action of being grateful. So in that way, we must remember, with sense of equality, that is very important, and that is a part and parcel of a good, wholesome mind. Moving on, right? Moving on. The next 12 universal beautiful Cetasikas fall into 6 pairs each, containing one term that extends to the mental body, Kaya, and the other that extends to the consciousness, Chitta. In this context, the mental body is a collection of associated Cetasikas called body, in the sense of aggregation, right? In the sense of aggregation, right? Good. Now, tranquility, right? Passaddhi. So remember, we had Kaya Passaddhi and Chitta Passaddhi, right? Kaya Passaddhi and Chitta Passaddhi. So we are going into Kaya Passaddhi and Chitta Passaddhi now. The twofold tranquility has a characteristic of quieting down of the disturbances. Quieting down of the disturbances, right? In the mental body and consciousness respectively, right? In the mental body and the consciousness respectively. I hope you understand what Kaya Passaddhi and Chitta Passaddhi is. Kaya Passaddhi is referring to the effect it has on the rest of the mental factors arising with that consciousness. Do you understand? So we have a consciousness here, and we have the mental factors, right? The consciousness, and you have the mental factors, right? Kaya Passaddhi refers to this. Chitta Passaddhi refers to this, right? The consciousness. The effect Chitta Passaddhi refers to this Cetasika and the effect it has on this. Kaya Passaddhi refers to this Cetasika and the effect it has on the rest. Understood? Can I have a wave of the head so that I see that you have understood? Good. Okay. Good. So, Dharta. In the mental body and consciousness, respectively, its function is to crush such disturbances. It is manifested as peacefulness and coolness, right? Its proximate cause is the mental body and consciousness. It should be regarded as opposed to defilements such as restlessness and worry, which create distress. Now, this is one of the reasons that parents should make it a point to take children to places that are calm and quiet and, you know, all of these things, right? Because when you are promoting that sort of an affection towards sort of mental tranquility, there is an inclination of the child's mind, even anyone's mind, towards something which is more wholesome, right? Towards something. Now, even when I was younger, I'm sure when you all were younger as well, I'm sure you all would go to, maybe you all would go to sleep. I used to go to sleep listening to, music and, all of these things. And, now, it would be absolutely a horror if we had to go to sleep with music on, right? Because the effect it has on the sleep, you don't sleep well, and the message it gives the mind, you have weird dreams that arises and all of that. But when you are young, it's a different altogether, right? So this intervention where you sort of have your children taken into these places, and it promotes a wellness of mind in that way. Moving on, right, to lightness, kaya lahuta, chitta lahuta, right? The twofold lightness has a characteristic of the subsiding of heaviness, right? The subsiding of heaviness. Now, in the before one, what did we have? Quieting of the disturbances. The second, subsiding of heaviness. Now, look at these qualities here. These are the qualities that needs to be in your mind when you're meditating, when you're basically doing something good. Right? So, for example, if you are a person whose mind sort of rumbles and cracks like, cans and canisters falling on the ground, right? Then you need to really zen out and chill out, right? Because that is a sign that your mind is more inclined towards unwholesome, right? More inclined towards unwholesome, right? So, lahuta, the twofold lightness has a characteristic of subsiding of heaviness in the mental body and consciousness respectively. Its function is to crush heaviness. It is manifested as non-sluggishness, right? Its function is to crush heaviness, and its manifestation is non-sluggishness, right? Non-sluggishness. Its proximate cause is the mental body and consciousness. It should be regarded as opposed to such defilements such as sloth and torpor, which create heaviness. Now, this kind of thing, you really realize when the mind is in a calm state of samadhi, right, where you are not pushing yourself, but it is in this calm state of samadhi where you are absolutely in a state of relaxation, right? In a state of relaxation, and more than relaxation, awareness and concentration, right? Where you don't have to push it. So likewise, this lightness that is brought about by doing something which is good, right? That doing something which is good, doing something which is rooted in the beautiful meditation, something being kind, compassionate, all of these things, right? Now, does anyone have any questions with regards to all that we have done today? Pushpa?
Bhante, what's the relation between Lajjabaya and Hiriotappa? Lajjabaya is shame.
Shame, Lajjabaya, and Hiriotappa. So, Lajjabaya is Hiriotappa.
Yeah, shame.
Yes.
Shame.
Wait. Let me go a bit. Lajjavabaya. So, okay. So, when you would say Lajjavabaya, now Lajjava is the shyness, isn't it? Or actually, it is Hiriotappa, right? It is Hiriotappa, but Lajjavabaya, it is more. Hiriotappa we translate in Sinhala. Akusaleda tibena lajjavasa bhaya. Right?
Yeah.
Hiriotappa akusaleda tibena lajjavasa bhaya is the way that we translate it, right? But if you, of course, say lajjavasa bhaya, it can both apply to akusala fear and dread, and as well as kusala fear and dread also. So, but in the Pali, I mean, if we are it is just the Sinhala word of Hiriotappa. So it's the same thing, Pushpa.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
Devika.
Yeah.
Mute
Bhante,
Okay, Nihal. Yeah.
can I ask now? I just want to sort of understand where, for example, let's take the beautiful the Chaitasikas we discussed now. Do they arise only with beautiful consciousnesses, or can they arise even in unwholesome consciousnesses?
No, they are not ethically variable. We only have, remember, we went through the ethically variable consciousnesses, which are 13, right?
Yeah, yeah.
Those 13 are the only 13 which will be ethically variable. The rest are not, right? So the wholesome factors will arise with the wholesome consciousnesses. The unwholesome factors will arise with the unwholesome consciousnesses. The ethically variable is where we will figure out, in terms of where it arises. So it can be ethically variable there.
Yeah. So it's in sort of, just say, mundane world, you come up with let's say a bad thought.
Yeah.
But you counter it with some of your whatever your personality, your experience, or your makeup, and you refrain from carrying out with that particular thought. Where would that fall into?
Where would that whole process of sort of shifting your attention from a good thought or changing a bad thought into a good thought fall into? Am I right?
Yeah. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So, okay. It would all depend. Now that shifting, how it is done, right? There are different factors which we have to consider regarding that shift, right? Now, sometimes if we are now considering that it actually does shift from bad to good, right? That is done through a wholesome contemplation over the bad, right?
Mm-hmm.
A wholesome, so it could arise with a beautiful chetasik, a beautiful chitta, and the beautiful chetasikas which would arise with those chittas. So the base would be a beautiful consciousness arising from one of the sobana chittas.
Okay.
Right. So that is very similar to any sort of anusati.
Yes. So does that process is as a result of the what you call the sort of the string of consciousnesses? Is that why? How do you have a bad thought, and then you reverse it? So is that because of the process of chain of consciousnesses, or is it a mental factor that counters the bad thought and turns it around to a good process?
It only counters the bad thought if you have such sort of a practice in place. It will not organically do it.
Okay.
Right. So if you have now some people have a practice in place where they will counter a bad thought, but some people don't. It all depends on what your practice is, what your habitual tendencies are. Sometimes people, they have had a bad thought, they've gone through it, they don't even realize they've gone through it. Right?
Sure.
They are sometimes so blasé to the fact that something of this sort has arisen. Right? So that wholly depends on what you choose to do, what your habitual tendencies are, and what your habitual cognitive patterns are. Right? Now, for example, for a person who has meditated, his normal cognitive pattern would be there would be no thoughts, bad thoughts in that manner arising. Right? In that manner arising. It would, so you would have to particularly focus on a bad thought and let that sort of arise for it to actually arise. That is because of the lack of that internal dialogue that we were speaking earlier of.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Right? So it wholly depends on what you choose to do with it.
Okay. Thank you. I incorporate more. Thank you very much. Thank you. Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Devika?
Yes, I was just going to say, Bhante,
Either I'll leave
in-
it with the potato soup. Just tiny bit.
Please go ahead.
I'm sorry. In regards to Saddha, the first one we discussed
Yeah.
under the Sobhana text, the beautiful, this is also like to confirm about the Saddha, you can also say it's unwavering faith in Buddha. Am I right?
No, you can't. Unwavering faith in the Buddha would arise when you have reached that state.
All right.
Right? So when you have reached that state, you can say unwavering faith in the Buddha. Right?
Yes.
Now this is sometimes, yes, so basically, yes, that is it. So when you have reached that state, yes, the Shraddha would operate in that manner, but not at this point.
Oh, I see.
Right?
That's what I wanted to check that out when you say Saddha.
Yeah, because now sometimes we might feel like, okay, I am a Buddhist, I've been a Buddhist for 40, 50, 60 years. What is, I have not changed my religion, I've not done. But I'm favoring this unwavering faith in the Buddha at your worst moment. Right? At your worst moment. If your life or everything that you have is threatened, would you still keep to the teachings? That is where this unwavering factor is questioned. Not when everything is going sort of dandy. Right? So to say that that is why the Shraddha needs to be operating at that level for it to be an unwavering level of Shraddha. Now, for example, we find that, with all the people who devoted themselves, for the pure reason of human rights, right? Who got killed in the wars, who got, with the purists. Sometimes you go to war because you can't have a bad reputation, no? Right? Because you can't go to a bad reputation, because you can't escape from it, because you will not be respected if you don't go to war. There are all of these reasons, isn't it? If you really look at the picture of it, right? But those of them who really, now for that amount of faith to arise, with regards to the teachings.
Yes.
Right?
So that's why, yes. So I have a lot of faith in the teachings, and then but in my mind, I always think that about Buddha, it's unwavering, but I know what you mean by saying it has to be unwavering, because you have to meditate and, your mind has to be more.
Yeah, I mean, the thing is, it has to be allowed to sink in, in a way, especially for us, because we have a nature that could be particularly defiled, right? Particularly wavering, particularly restless, right? But also sometimes it is difficult to say so, because there are special characters as well, right? Sometimes there are special characters as well. So of course, in a general sense, we could say, because we live in that sort of a time, but sometimes we find special characters as well. But that is what is mentioned in the Shraddha. Okay, Devika?
Okay.
All right. Does anyone else have a question?
Bhante, can I ask you
Yes.
the proximate cause for tranquility?
The proximate cause of tranquility. Hold on, let me go there. Okay. The proximate cause for tranquility is the mental body and consciousness. So the cause for the reason for which the tranquility, lightness, malleability, and even wildness arises is based on, because its primary factor is concerned in the consciousness and the chetasikas, no?
Yeah.
right? It is to discipline them. It is to put them into a certain way, right? So without the chittas or the chetasicas, these four will not arise. Not four. These six will not arise, right? These six will not arise, right? That is why its proximate cause is the chitta and the mental factors. Understood?
Yeah, thank you.
Good. I feel that the lack of bodily restlessness is also a causative factor. Ru, do you want to ask that question? Okay. Shriyani, do you have a question?
Well, I was thinking this, if someone, if a little child would not know anything about the Sobhana Chittas, if someone is there's a child being brought up in a Sobhana Chitta background, the child would never know anything like Akusal Chitta, would they?
It doesn't matter whether you know or not.
Yeah.
A child would experience moments of happiness. A child would experience moments of pain. A child would experience moments of kindness, compassion, empathy. Likewise, all of these emotions are emotions that we have all experienced throughout the time after we have been born to the time that we die, regardless of knowledge. Regardless of knowledge. Right? There are forces in this world, whatever said and done, there are forces in this world that gives us hope in some sort of way, that gives us a sense of light in some sort of way to say the world can be better. The world should be better. The world should be happier. But we have never experienced the world to be happier. But there is something in this world, in this energy of this world, which sort of draws us into or towards that happiness, right? So your knowledge, regardless of what the base of knowledge is, people would experience these consciousnesses as and when the time arises.
Thank you.
Yeah? Does anyone else have anything to say or ask? If not, we will wrap up the session and continue later on, continue next week. Apologies for yesterday's session. There was something wrong with the Zoom and I had to uninstall it and reinstall it and something happened. So apologies for that happening, but I think it should be okay. It is okay now, but certain technical difficulties that we go through operating online. So we will continue as the classes progress as planned. So I will all see you on Saturday for the meditations, as well as Venerable Khanda's talk at 1 o'clock to 2:30. So tell your friends, tell your family, you know. I've been promoting the talk throughout now. It's like, you know, you are stuck with it. It's there, right there. So thank you very much. I will hope you have a good rest of the and the last Saturday meditation, I think I'm not uploading all the meditations, but I think the last one I have uploaded it because it was a good meditation, intense meditation. I have uploaded it onto the website as I remember, but I will check, and if I haven't, I will upload it. Thank you, Kitsray. So thank you very much. And I hope that you have a good rest of the day, and I will see you all day after tomorrow, right? Day after tomorrow. Take care and good night.